Okay, so lots of people were asking this week about working from home and training and balancing all of that. I do think that this is one situation where we are actually particularly like, if you play the bingo card, we've got that one down pretty well because of the fact that we're largely, Nate, we're largely a work from home company, right?
Our office in
remotely.
Reno has half the employees and the other half work remote. And we have an office in Folsom. So, we are built to be remote anyways, and people can work from home when they want. So yeah, that's what it is.
I think so. We all have experience with that. I mean, Amber, you work from home,
Yep.
and all of us here. So we have some experience on this. So a couple things just on the working from home part of things. I think that one thing that's tempting, especially because it's been so chaotic, having us all thrown into this situation, you can step back and look at how your schedule that you had before, whatever that schedule was, you don't necessarily need to maintain that same schedule. Having a schedule is still important, but you don't still need to maintain the exact same schedule right now. And that can really open up some time for you to be able to fit in training in different spots with more comfort rather than trying to pack it in. That's one thing that I would recommend. Nate,
can I elaborate?
Please, Chad. Yeah, go ahead.
I do agree with that. And I think if you have the flexibility and your old training routine or schedule wasn't working for you, this is a good time to reshape it. But if it was working for you, this is not an excuse to divert from it, because I've made that very mistake. I started postponing my workouts to later in the morning, and that becomes later in the day. That becomes later in the afternoon. Then the evening rolls around, and either I do it and it probably affects my sleep or interrupts my meal time, or I don't do it. And that's happened a couple times now. And I again, if it's working for you, probably don't change it.
Yeah. Yeah. And with kids too, I think that's like another big thing, right? Like with sleep schedules, right, Nate?
Oh yeah.
We were talking about this. Yeah.
I get up at like 7:45 because we start at 8 here. So I get up like right before, and then there's some probably not very professional pictures of me on a Zoom call in bed with messy hair. So training with kids, we should probably two of us have kids here. Yeah. It's very hard, especially if you have older kids. I don't really know, but I don't think this is an issue. If they're teenagers, they don't want to talk to you anyways. But if you have young kids, if you have really young kids, it's hard, but it's not as hard, especially if they can sleep and they're next to you in a pack and play or something like that. But it's that age that like 2 to, I don't know, 6 or 7, that's pretty hard, where they don't understand that they're not supposed to talk to you on the trainer, and like they don't care what you're doing. And maybe there are strategies, and there's probably, if there's amount of iPad time that you want, that's probably the time you're saving it is for, if they get an hour a day of screen time, it's while you're on the bike. But the thing that my wife does, the number one way to like get through this, and it's really hard to do, is do your workouts before they wake up. And that's before work. That you can be the most consistent. The hardest part is getting up and actually doing them. So setting everything up, like everything completely up, where you just have to, I even put my kid out and that sort of stuff in socks, where you can literally roll out of bed and do it, grab your coffee if you want that, and get on the bike and just start pedaling. Because even 10 minutes, like it's annoying when they wake up in the last 10 minutes and you got an interval and you're trying to talk to them and they're like trying to tell you something about the dream. Not that my kids are annoying, but it gets agitating.
Hard, though. It's super hard.
It's the cognitive load of trying to talk to them while you're in an interval.
And since you love them, you don't want to just like disregard them, right? So like, yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's complex.
I love them, but sometimes,
Of course.
The other, I mean, if you have a significant other too that doesn't work out and they can watch them during that time, that's also an awesome tip. But I think for a lot of people, early morning workouts can be hard with nutrition. I've played with this. I've done different things. I think aerobic, we're all pretty good with trying to do your aerobic without anything in your stomach at first. Drink some coffee, black coffee. Chad and I both like that if you can stomach it. And then as you go on, if you do need carbohydrates, you can roll those in, or you just eat a breakfast afterwards. I don't think that's a thing that people really get messed up with. But it's the intensity that can be pretty hard, especially sweet spot. And I've done 2 different strategies, or 3. The worst one for me is eating like an hour before. I get that hypoglycemic rebound effect. That does not happen to everybody, but I get like really shaky. All the energy goes out for me. I've done Ezekiel like raisin bread with honey on it, like immediately before I eat it and then get on the bike. That's worked pretty well. But honestly, I've just done a gel maybe 10 minutes before I get on and then ride with carbs. And that's worked for me too. So maybe I don't need the extra bread, right? I could do that later. And I would just say, as Chad said too, this is if you don't have problems, don't change it. But if you do have problems, maybe experiment a little bit with different situations and see what gets you out of bed and what motivates you and what makes the workout a little bit easier for those more intense rides. Chad?
Yeah, Chad.
I completely agree. I've been an early morning workout guy for quite a long time. And I taught very early morning classes for a short period of time. They were at 5:30 a.m. and then they migrated to 6 p.m. or I'm sorry, a.m. And a lot of those people were parents and they worked out at that specific time because that's the time they could get away with it. So the early morning workouts, though it is a difficult hurdle to initially clear, over time, it becomes habit just like anything else. And you establish what works for you in terms of nutrition, in terms of rise time relative to when you want to be on the bike. It eventually gels, I promise.
Another good tip is, and this is so hard to do, but when your kids go to bed at like 8 or 8:30, you go to bed because you'll probably sleep less than them. You'll wake up before, and that time difference is it. If you have them go to bed at 8 and you're like, oh, now I get 2 hours to relax, you go to bed at like 10:30, 11, and then it's really hard to wake up. Mm-hmm. So you kind of say, hey, based on my goals, I want that exercise time to be in the morning where I'm by myself. And that will, I think we're going to talk about it. That's going to make you feel better, especially in a time of stress.
Yeah.
You don't want to overdo it.
Couldn't agree more. I think one aspect of this too with the kids, I mean, our son wakes up, I swear he wakes up every morning at 5 a.m. So it's pretty tough to beat him up. He's up early. But one thing with this, like you mentioned, Nate, is doing the handoff thing. You may just have to, and this is super important, especially during like a stressful time. Like my wife works from home. She did work from home beforehand. She has a pretty demanding job, just with workload and emotionally demanding. And then, I'm working from home and then we're trying to keep our son entertained. It's really tricky, but I do think the handoff thing is really important because that does at the very least provide each person with some me time. And I found that that's really important and kind of being like strict with that. And that goes for your work schedule too, just like a work from home general tip, like having time where you're fully on and then time where you're fully off, because it's super tempting and you can just fall into this state where you're constantly halfway on, halfway off. And then as a result, what ends up happening is you never get to decompress and then you never have time for training either, because then at that point your work is never done. So you always have to continue to work. It gets really tough. So it's definitely one thing that I would do that. And I would also, with the kids too, set expectations. I found with our son, I have to say like, mom's going to work right now and she's going to train right now from this time to this time. And during that time, we can't bother her, but it's okay. Because after that, we'll be able to, do something like that. But if you communicate it beforehand, they will not remember it all the time. And they'll probably go against whatever, agreed upon advice or anything else that you put out. But at the same time, I've found that it helps us if we just kind of like set those expectations of like, this is an important part of the day. I'm going to set it aside. And hopefully now that more people are working from home, this is probably something that is a bit more feasible because like you said, Nate, you can have everything out and it's right at reach rather than having to, bring your bike to work and train outside or something like that. It's
like the setup we have at work, which we're really lucky, I think, to be able to just jump on and do it. Another pro tip for that like work-life balance, if you can get this culture at your company. So we use Slack. We never email each other. We don't text each other. And what we do in Slack is what I tell people to do, and everyone does it. But when you're not on working hours, you can set like this snooze or sleep schedule. You get this little Z. And what that does is when you message someone or you add someone, the message doesn't go to their phone and give them a notification. And what's really cool, I like about this is that people can still communicate, and it's kind of like you can get a like teed up message for the morning. So if I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell Chad about something that needs to happen and it's not urgent, I can still message him and he won't see that unless he checks Slack until the next morning. And that allows people to have that kind of escape from work. And I think like long-term, you're going to be more productive. The other thing that's cool about that is there's a little button on Slack. And if I need to break that snooze, if it's an emergency, let's say I'm talking to an engineer and like a website's down or something, I can hit the button and it will go to their phone. Mm-hmm. So people can still keep notifications on, but you just got to be very mindful. Here at work, we think about it when you add someone or your notification, it's like tapping on their shoulder. So you don't want to, in general conversation, like at or message people, just say their name and they'll come back and see it. Because if you think about how much happens in Slack, how much you might get noticed, if you want, like, if it's important enough to walk to their desk and tap them on the shoulder and tell them, then you should be adding them in the app. This is way off topic, but I like talking about this stuff. I want to do my own like business podcast because I have very strong opinions, stronger than cycling for sure.
Just for sure.
We could do wine with Nate.
That one could get wild. But yeah, it's interesting. A lot of you have written in questions specifically asking on like how to increase productivity on just working from home. Not very cycling and triathlon related seeming in many regards, but it is something where, you know, we definitely have a lot of experience in trying to optimize around that, but it all ties back into affecting your cycling for sure, or your training in whatever regard you're doing. Last tip really quick on the kids thing. This came from Nathan, one of our new product marketing managers, which is awesome. Nathan mentioned that he's been doing his aerobic rides with a bike trailer with his, I think his daughter. So he basically has a bike trailer, rides in safe zone, of course, assuming that it's safe and assuming that that's, you know, something that's okay right now. And that's a good way for him to get into his aerobic rides. Aerobic rides, it's not as important about, you know, like maintaining a specific power target probably the whole way through, but it's nice and easy to just kind of sit in the specific zone and sit within there and pedal along easy. So it's a good way to kind of involve your kids somehow. I know with our son, like we actually have like a little 3D printed trainer that just like lifts his pedal bike off the ground, his back wheel. And then he gets on his trainer next to us when we're training, you know, and he loves to spin and stuff. So involving them somehow in that process. He also knows that like our son, we've explained to him, like, you train to go fast in races. So whenever he sees that, he's like, oh, this is going to be great. Like, we're going to go fast in a race. And, you know, so it's involving them definitely helps rather than just trying to position it as a one against the other situation.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.